The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination, other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media, is strictly prohibited.
So welcome back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with the panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today our panel will again be answering listener emails, and our question comes from Thomas, who lives in Sacramento, California. Thomas asks, the Trump White House has removed more news outlets from the press pool, replacing them with more friendly, in quotes, outlets such as Newsmax, Axios, and The Blaze. I think I know why these changes were made, but what is the panel's take? And what do you say?
Well, what does he think it is about?
He doesn't say.
He didn't say.
Well, yeah, he didn't really put that in the email, what he thought it was about. I think he was just trying to get some validation from us without biasing our opinion, I would think.
Well, it's fairly obvious what's going on here as far as the controlling the media. I mean, this is something Orban did really well in Hungary, and obviously Putin has done it really well, and dictators across time have done this to weed out any kind of opposition in the media and only give access to people who play the game the way they want them to play it, working the refs, as it were. Anything beyond that, Mark?
You know what? Scott, that is. And hopefully Thomas in Sacramento, I believe it was Sacramento, California, was thinking the exact same thing. I'm going to say he was, because it's stacking the deck, basically, for information. It is an old tactic. It's been used for centuries. I mean, we always look at things like this and we say, well, it goes back to Nazi Germany, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. I mean, the British Empire in its time was very good at misinformation and disinformation, as were the Romans, as were, every single society out there. Those in power only want the people to know what they want them to know and nothing more. And they want to have a script out there that basically supports the positions that they want to support. So yeah, Thomas, if you think that this is because they're stacking the deck to hold back information, you're absolutely right. That's exactly what it is. There really is no other reason for them to do it. I mean, taking Reuters and taking the AP and, it's amazing when you look at the outlets that they're taking out, it almost makes it so obvious. Yeah, they want friendly questions. They want that guy from Fox News, asking questions, and they want the Newsmax, and they want OAN and all these other. I had never heard of the Blade, so I actually have to look them up. I don't know who they are. Scott, do you know who they are?
The Blaze. That's Glenn. What's his name? Glenn Beck.
Oh, Glenn Beck. Oh, okay, all right.
That's his thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So there's not going to be a lot of pushback coming from that quarter. No. It's like when they did a town hall meeting I think it was during Trump's first term, not the election. And one of the questions he got that was pre-screened by the people doing the town hall meeting was, how did you become so awesome? That's the kind of thing that they want. But look, this is working, because you see what Jeff Bezos did today. Jeff Bezos put out a note that he says he shared about the change coming to Washington Post's opinion page. And I'm going to quote it. "We're going to be writing every day in support of and defense of two pillars, personal liberties and free markets. We'll cover other topics too, of course, but viewpoints opposing those pillars will be left to be published by others. There was a time when a newspaper, especially one that was a local monopoly, might have seen it as a service to bring to the reader's doorstep every day a broad-based opinion section that sought to cover all views. Today, the internet does that job. I am of America and for America and proud to be so. Our country didn't get here by being typical, and a big part of America's success has been freedom in the economic realm and everywhere else. Freedom is ethical. It minimizes coercion, and practical. It drives innovation, creativity, and prosperity. I've offered David Shipley, who resigned, basically, the role of doing that. So Shipley is no longer the opinion editor, and Bezos says we'll be searching for a new opinion editor to own this new direction. So basically, they're saying that there's not going to be any dissent coming from the Washington Post. And I don't know how many times I can quit this damn newspaper. They came back to me and they gave me an offer I couldn't refuse, like $3 a month or something like that. And I'm like, well, now I gotta go again. And this time what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna recommit that money to like Substack or ProPublica or something like that. So I don't have that money anymore to spend on the Washington Post, because the Washington Post is no longer the Washington Post. And it's a newspaper that I read every day, but I've learned to live without MSNBC for various reasons, and I can learn to live without Washington Post.
MSNBC also fired Joy Reid, as I understand.
Yes.
Every person they had of color was fired.
Yes. And to go with Thomas's question, what I haven't heard anything more about that. I just saw that happened and that every person of color was fired. And I thought, what on earth is MSNBC doing? And so what more do you know about that?
So I believe it's called capitulation. MSNBC has fired most recently Rachel Maddow's entire staff, I believe, to try to cut her down. But the other people who got fired, Joy Reid, Alex Wagner, Jonathan Capehart, Katie Fang, Eamon Mohiuddin, Jose Diaz-Balart, are all lost their shows. And I don't know who they're replacing them with, but I'm sure it'll be more anodyne people. Look, there was no reason to fire Alex Wagner from this. She moderated a show. She asked questions and she got answers. If they didn't like Joy Reid's positions on things, they could insist on having counter programming. But the fact is that what they all have in common is that they are non-white.
Because in today's society, everybody that is not white is a DEI hire.
Now, I should point out that Alicia Menendez, Michael Steele, and Simone Sanders Townsend have replaced them. Okay, and two of those three are African American, and Alicia Menendez, I'm assuming, is Hispanic or married to one. I'm not really sure, but they're changing things. Again, I don't watch it, so I'm not getting my news from media anymore. I'm an avid reader and I read everything that I can get my hands on. So I don't need TV news. Never liked it anyway. I got tired of the Morning Joe, that became too comical in the last election. Anyway, enough is enough. MSNBC is a failure and deserves more failure.
And I think it's also, important, when we're talking about this, Lester Holt is stepping down as the anchor for NBC. Again, a man of color, very, very respected and trusted in the news industry. And I mean, he's still going to have his one show that he's going to moderate. But I think it's interesting at this time when they're starting, when MSNBC, which is part of NBC, starts calling out the people of minorities, that Lester Holt basically says, okay, I'm done. So I don't know if it has anything to do with that. Might not, because he has not been really forthcoming as to, his decision making. But it does seem that this may be tied together, and he may have just saw the writing on the wall and said, you know what, I don't need this. I don't need it. And he definitely doesn't. There's no doubt about that. So another thing, let's see what happens. As Scott says, Michael Steele's in there. Simone is in there. Let's see how long they last. Not too sure. I can say that, Michael Steele, who was chairman of the Republican Party at one time, let's listen to what now they have to say. And let's see what they have to say about on their shows. And if they're more moderated, and if they're more moderate than, say, a Rachel Maddow or a Joy Reid was. So it'll be interesting to see.
So then who's left? PBS? Democracy Now? I mean, there's...
Well, PBS until they stop the funding.
PBS, okay. Right.
I've always encouraged everyone, look overseas.
Yep.
Look to the Germans. They have them. They have the German channels in English. They have the French in English.
They
They
do.
have, you've got a lot of really good BBC shows out there to get
CBC.
information. Huh?
CBC as well. The
CBC.
Canadian.
You could go to the
CTV.
Canadians.
Yep.
Because they're not capitulating.
No,
They're
they're
going to
not.
tell it. They're going to tell it the way it says because they can't be controlled. So again, look outside the United States, and there's plenty of places to get them.
And by the way, Musk is also a Canadian citizen. His
Good for him.
mother was born in Regina in Saskatchewan, and there's a petition going around Canada to relieve Musk of his citizenship and passport. I mean, whether that will get to the government and whether that will happen, I don't know. But I had not been aware that Musk is also Canadian as well as South African, and I'm assuming that he also has an American passport. I don't know about that, but I just became aware of that this morning through watching, I don't know if it's CBC or CTV. But yeah, and you said DW, Deutsche Welle, the German Wave is excellent. BBC. Yep, you got to go outside the United States now for decent news. Alrighty, so anything more to say about Thomas's question?
I think we beat that one to death.
Agreed.
All right, so thank you to everyone for joining us again on the Nova Society, and we hope to see you next time.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or a comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert and cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.